paper reports that two of the male prostitutes were given a late-night tour of the White House last year.
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers!
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth!
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Nick Bryant podcast. And today, my guest is William Binney, an NSA whistleblower. How are you doing today, Bill?
Oh, pretty good. Thank you very much. Good to be with you.
So you started with mathematics. You got a degree in mathematics from Pennsylvania State University. And then you ultimately ended up at the Army Security Agency from 65 to 69. And at that point, you started developing algorithms that would predict certain conflicts. And from what I read, the algorithms that you devised predicted the Russian invasion of Czechoslovakia and the Yom Kippur War.
Well, mine were more the also with Afghanistan.
Yes.
And in the Polish crisis, we had some stuff too.
And then you transferred to the National Security Agency in 1970, and you rose to the rank of Geopolitical World Technical Director. Could you tell us a little bit about how you felt transferring to the NSA?
Well, as a mathematician, NSA offers so many opportunities for puzzles, solving different kinds of crypto puzzles and codes and things of that nature. So it's really a mathematician's dream to try to solve puzzles. That's the kind of thing we like to do. And so when I started getting experience in that in the Army Security Agency, I started breaking some things, and they saw that back at NSA, and they said, they wanted me back there. So instead of sending me to Vietnam at the time, they sent me back to NSA, where they had a lot more puzzles and bigger puzzles. So it was a lot more fun for me as a mathematician to solve those puzzles. So I just got in it through the Army.
And at the time, the NSA was gathering massive amounts of data, but its analysts were just buried by it. They had no clue about how to utilize it, from what I understand.
Yeah, and when the digital age came in, it got even worse. I mean, it multiplied orders of magnitude worse. And that's basically what I tried to do when I was still there as the director of the technical director of the military geopolitical and military analysis of the world group, about 6,000 analysts. I could see the problem was overburdening our analysts to try to find material that was relevant. So that's what the whole idea behind the programs I was developing was to weed out the material that was relevant, get rid of everything else, and have the analysts focus on a rich environment to solve problems. And that's really, it was try to how can you manage massive amounts of data without having to look at it? Because if you start looking at it, it buries you. And that's what was happening.
So you ultimately became, or the key to your success was metadata, using the relationships of people and organizations and how they communicate. Could you tell us a little bit about metadata?
Well, metadata is kind of the attributes of things, of people and devices. And also it has to do with duration and environment and things of that nature. So it's like time sequencing, time relationships, time duration, people's attributes like their phone numbers, email account numbers, machine access codes, things of that nature. And also, passwords, things of that. That's the metadata about a person that describes them in the environment. And so metadata basically allows you to pull together relationships in the world without actually having to look at data to build them. You don't look at the data being talked about or said or written. You look at the metadata, and you can reconstruct communities of people that's what they're calling social communities now, I guess. Back then we called them basically networks or groups of people. Things, and that basic idea goes all the way back to World War One. In the military communications back in World War One is when they were trying to build army networks, communications of the networks, and so on, to show structure and command the system. So it's an old time. It's been more than 100 years that people have been using this. So,
but the NSA didn't want, from what I understand, the NSA didn't want to embrace the ways that you were thinking about metadata.
Well, a lot of them couldn't understand it. A lot of them couldn't understand anything unless they saw it in writing or from a transcript from a phone call or something of that nature, where they had words that they could read and understand the words. When it comes to metadata, it's kind of abstract. It's like how things actually fit together on a much broader scale. Not when you read things, you see something right in front of you. So you get a window into that little event. But if you look at metadata, you get a view into the entire scope of everything that's happening. So you have an idea of this breadth and scope of it.
And then in 1993, a small PC landed on your desk, and with the help of a colleague, you applied your ideas and concepts of metadata. And actually, it was a better predictor than, as you say, the NASA's or the NSA's acres of mainframe computers.
Yeah, that was 1983. Yeah, but it was I had a mathematical solution to a problem, and the problem was a kind of universal one within this target, and the solution would allow me to understand and know anything that could possibly be used. So in other words, everything they could possibly have, I already had mapped in my mathematical solution, and when I applied it, it worked like a charm on a little 2-disk drive, 64K RAM PC.
And ultimately, the program that you wrote, ThinThread, came out of that around 1997, I think.
Well, the concepts of it, yeah. It was the same kind of concept applying to different sets of metadata, but the principles are the same. How you first figure out the scope of things, and then what kinds of things can you do to basically pick out things that are really important within that set of information.
And from what I understand, ThinThread could make connections between 7 billion points of data, or nodes, as you called them.
Well, yeah, it actually ended up into trillions of transactions, but yeah, it boiled down to billions of relationships. Yeah.
And you could actually monitor the world almost in real time with ThinThread.
Yes, it was. In fact, when it got into the internet, basically, and when we were able to sessionize data at fiber optic rates in 1998, that meant we could capture everything in the world. The only limitation would be space and power. But at that point, we were capable of capturing everything in the world.
So, and you potentially realized that this could be used against Americans.
Oh, yeah.
You called ThinThread basically a KGB on steroids. And you, to ensure that this wasn't used on Americans, you encrypted U.S. citizens, their information, and had other built-in protections. And and also you had algorithms that filtered out, I guess, U.S. citizens.
Well, and everybody else that wasn't relevant. It actually pulled out only significant relevant information in the world.
And at that point, were you worried at all that the NSA could use this information for malevolent use?
Well, I mean, when you're drilled every year, we have to go to classes that have, FISA, they call them FISA review classes. You have to go in and review the FISA law and the UCID 18, which was our Bible, which says you don't spy on Americans and all that. That all was written for NSA and NSA employees as a result of the FISA laws in 1978, I think it was. And that was the Bible. We had to review that every year, And so I had no real inclination that the agency would do anything different than follow the law. But then when Hayden came in and Bush and Cheney and Tenet down at CIA, and they got together and they just decided after 9/11, the law doesn't apply.
Michael Hayden became the NSA director in 1999, and that was a game changer for you. But here was someone that wasn't really concerned about the constitutional rights of Americans.
Well, he didn't appear to be. I mean, he was ready to do anything the White House said.
As Dick Cheney would say, taking it to the dark side.
Yeah.
Now, you were asked.
I could point out, though, they started it, but Obama came along, realized the power of it, and doubled down on it. You know, it just got worse.
So they said that they asked you if you could implement ThinThread for $1.2 billion, and you said that you could upgrade it and implement it for $300 million.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you were asked if you could upgrade it for $1.4 million. When you
That's right.
actually said, you know, it's going to take $300 million.
Yeah.
And so at that point, you'd realized that the NSA was gouging money from Congress for things that it really didn't need or have.
And I would point out that I was closely relating that to Diane Rourke, who was the House Intelligence Committee staffer in charge of the NSA account. So they knew that what the NSA was asking for, all that money, was not really necessary. So they knew that. And she kept trying to get the agency to adopt some of the things we had to advance their program. And they refused to do it because they wanted the money to spend. So, and the contractors were out there too. And I came up with their vision statement for all contractors working for the government: keep the problem going so the money keeps flowing.